Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlema, for Ilan Chaye Baserach, and for Meir Ben Cyril Peril. We're on Daf Ches Amid Aleph, right at the top, starting right at the top of the Yom. Omer of Zera Omer Shmuel, Lieben Sakin v'shachatba. If someone heated up a knife, the slaughtering knife, he made it white hot, and he used it for shchita, shchitase kshera. The shchita is kshera. Now, obviously, we know that you have shchita requires that you use the knife to cut. You have to slice with the knife. The sharpness of the knife has to cut. You can't use a laser to cut. You can't cut with heat. You can't, let's say, take a flamethrower or a blowtorch and use that to cut. You must cut with the slicing motion, with the sharpness. So the problem is, what if you have this knife that's both cutting with its sharpness as well as with heat? The heat is burning a hole as well. So he says, the shchita is kshera. Chiduda koidem lilivuna. The sharpness is what cuts it before the fire has a chance to burn it. When you take a white hot slaughtering knife, it first cuts and then afterwards it burns. Okay, that's true of the actual edge. When the edge touches the throat of the animal, it first cuts and then burns. What about the sides of the knife? The whole knife is hot. So then the sides of the knife will burn after it cuts in a little bit. Let's say it gets through one siman, the sides are burning. And when you have when you burn the sides of the incision where the knife cut it, that is going to make the animal a treifa. It'll become a treifa because of the burning. It won't be able to survive just because of the burning, leaving aside what you cut. So it should become, before you cut through both simanim, the animal has become a treifa because of that burning. So tomorrow, Beis Hashchita Mirvich Ravach. Well, it says no. It's the only part that touches the animal is the edge of the knife. The sides of the knife don't touch the opening of the incision, the sides of the incision, because as he cuts it, the cut opens and it doesn't touch the side of the knife. The side of the knife is some space between the side of the knife and the animal. So it doesn't make the heat of the side of the knife doesn't make the animal into a treif. Gemara is going to ask another question, which we'll try to answer from the statement that we just said, that when someone shechs with a white hot knife, that the shchita is ksher. Ibailu. Lieben shvud. Now we're talking about the din now. We're going to the din of mitzayra. So there's two types of tzaras that we're going to be talking about here. We're talking about tzaras of shchin and the tzaras of michveh. Tzaras is a type of tzara. Shchin is a type of tzaras where a heat comes up on the person's body because of a blow, or because of some kind of heat arises, either because he was hit or because heat was applied that didn't come from a flame. Like, for example, if you have geothermal heat, and that causes someone to get, to get scalded, to get a burn, a second-degree burn. That's considered a shchin. That's not a michvah. The only thing that causes a burn a shchin is one. So a shchin is a non-fire caused burn. It could come from either getting hit. Right? If someone gets hit, his skin gets inflamed, it gets hot. Or if it's touched by something that's not caused by a fire. But if his skin becomes burnt from a fire, that's called a michvah. I'm going to see what the nafkamina is between these two things. But before we get to what the nafkamina is, we're going to say, Ibaylu, libein shvud. If someone heated up a poker, a stick, Vehikaboy, bishum shchinodin or bishum michvenodin. If someone got hit, talking about this, good morning, Dovi.
One.
Uh, I just told Rafal how much I'm enjoying this plot. I find it very interesting. So we had first said a din that if someone heated up a knife to use for shechita, we say that the cutting of the knife is what made the cut, and therefore it's a good shechita. We don't say that the heat of the knife, because it was heated up, burnt it, and it becomes treifa because of the heat. So now we're asking the second question. We're 4 lines down in Chesam and Aleph. If someone heated up a metal bar and he hit a person with it, so normally hitting someone causes a shchin, and a burn causes a michvah. So the question is, do we judge that the blunt force caused it to be a shchin on the person, or it made it into a michvah? And then afterwards a white spot arose or a hair grew on it. So these things should make it into a tzaras. But the preliminary part is that first is a shchin or a mechva. So what is this going to be? First, I'm going to ask Lamai Nafkamina, what difference does it make if it's considered a shchin or a mechva? They both are treated the same. They're both going to have the same rules. So the Gemara says, look at the Tanya. The reason why we want to know is because of this reason. Shchinu michva metabim mishvua echad b'shnei semanim b'se'er lavan u'b'pisyain. Both a shchin, a tzaras of a shchin, or a tzaras of a michva are going to be metama at the end of 1 week. If you the kohen, you brought it to the kohen to look at it. At the end of the week, you have one of these two semanim that it grew a hair, a white hair, or it spread. They're both going to be treated, either one of them are going to be treated as tzaras. So what do we care whether it's a shchin or a michva? We're going to treat it the same way. So why did the Torah separate them? It's to tell you, because you have to have, in order for a person to be tamei tzaras, to become a mitzayra, he has to have a tzaras that's the size of a gris. So it's coming to tell you, if you have a half a gris of a michva and a half a gris of a shchin, you can't combine them. So that's why it makes a difference. So if you have, if let's say you have a half of a gris of a shchin, and then you have this other hika b'shvud that's heated up. So if it's considered also like a shchin, so another half of gris is considered like a shchin. So then you have two half a gris shchins, which equal up to 1 gris, and therefore it's going to be a tzaras. But if one half is a shchin and one half is a michvah, it's not going to be a tzaras. The Tanya, Ezu shchin and Brisa, that explains this. Ezu shchin ve'ezu michvah. What is considered a shchin and what is considered a michvah? Again, shchin is the one that's not caused by fire. A michvah is a burn that's caused by fire, and then later on the simanim of tzaras occurred on it. So what's the difference between them? Loka be'etz, if he got hit with a stick of wood, even, or with a rock. Begefes, with gefes is what do you call it? It's a kind of something made from shem and zayis. B'chami tferia, if he got burnt with hot water from a hot spring, so it wasn't heated up with fire. It's heated up from the earth. Or any kind of burn that comes, or inflammation that comes from either force or from a heat that's not coming from fire. Lasui aver meikrai, and that includes even if someone had lead that was heated up he took lead from deep under the earth, so it was heated up from the earth. Zeu shchin. All these things are not considered to be michvah, a burn, rather considered to be a shchin. Ve'ezu michvah. What's considered a michvah? Nikva begacheles, if he got burnt by a coal, beremetz with hot ashes, besid with hot lime, besid roisech with hot lime, begufsis roisech with gufsis, which is another material that got heated up in the fire. Anything that was heated up in a fire. Lasuye chameyar, to include even hot water. Hot water even though water, to some extent, one might not consider it to be heated up by fire because it's water. Water is somehow the opposite of fire. Zui mikveh. All these things are considered mikveh. Betanya. Okay. So we said this is the distinction between them. This is why it makes a difference. Betanya. Shchinu mikveh. If someone got a shchin and then afterwards got a mikveh on the same spot, it means first it was hit by a stick, by a baseball bat. That's a shchin, and then afterwards it became a mikveh that it got burnt with a blowtorch. Im shchin koydem lemikveh batel mikveh. The gabi this by shchita we said whichever one came first. That's if it's the knife that cuts it first. That's what we're going to pay attention to. But legabi b'tzayir, it's the other way around. Gabi tzaras, whatever's the most recent one, that's the way that wound or that wound is classified. That burn is classified. So if you have a shchin and then first it was hit with blunt force and then it was burnt, if the shchin came before the mikveh, batel mikveh. As a shchin, the mikveh takes precedence. Whatever came second, that's the way it's going to be treated as. The mikveh kadem as a shchin, batel shchin. As a mikveh. But if the mikveh became before the shchin, then the shchin is mevatel the mikveh. So what is the case over here? Going to have bechatzi gris shchin meikara, where he had a half of a gris of shchin, and that was not debatable. The liben shvud, and he heated up a shvud, and that's the question that we're talking about over here. He heated up a poker, and he hit him. Benafik bechatzi gris acha, and this caused a wound, a burn of another half a gris. Ma chavata kadam va'asi. Do we say Do we say that first came the force? That's what's treated as first, and then the heat came afterwards, and mevatel to the chavata. So now it's treated as a mechva, and therefore and therefore you have only half of a gris of each one. Do you say that the heat comes first when it's touched with something that's hot? Then the heat comes first, and then afterwards the blow. Then the hit is mevatel the heat. Then it would be two halves a gris of shchin, because the shchin was the second part of the hit with the poker, and you have a full gris, and that's enough for it to become a tzaras. So that's the question when we ask this to ibayalahu. When you have when someone's hit with a shvud, a heated up shvud, whether it's considered a mikvah or a shvud, that's enough to me. So Gemara says, Tashma, let's bring a raya from our original psak that we said on the top of the Yamit. Amar of Zera Amar Shmuel, Liben Sakin, the Shachad Bas, if someone heated up a knife and he shechted with it, the shchita is a good shchita. We don't say that the burning that came from the heated up knife happened first, and the animal became a treifa before the shchita. But rather, no, we said first it was a shchita, and then afterwards it got burnt. Chiduda kaidem livuna. The cut comes before the heat. Alma chavata kadem. So that tells you that the hit comes first, and afterwards comes the burn. And if that's the case, in our example, legabi the shchin and the mikvah, we should say first came the shchin, which is caused by the impact, and then afterwards came the mikvah, which is caused by the heat. And the example we gave before, since the other half of the gris was a shchin, it's not going to combine with the half that's a mikvah. So tomorrow, no, chidud shani. You can't compare the two cases. Our case of a shchita, we're talking about where it's being cut with a sharp edge. So when you have a sharp edge, the sharp edge cuts before it's burnt by the heat of the knife. Masha Enkein, by the case where he was hit with a heated stick, then in that case, the impact of the stick does not take effect as quickly as the slicing motion of a knife, and therefore it's going to first be, it's possible, it could be first burnt, and therefore be treated as a shchin because the impact came first. I'm sorry, the heat came first, and then the shchin came second. So therefore, the impact came second, and therefore, would both parts would be shchin, and it would be enough to mimit stop. Tashma. So the Gemara says, let's bring another right. Liben shvod v'hikaboy nida mishum michlas eish. We say in the Bryce, if someone hit someone else with a heated poker, he's nida mishum makas eish. It's treated as if he hit him from fire. So that tells you that it's that we look at not the at the impact, but rather we look at it as if we're treating it as a makas eish, we always look at the second thing. That's how you classify it. So you see al machavata kadam. That means that the impact comes first and then the eish, and that's why we're treating it as the second thing. So tomorrow, no. Hasam nami the bizraya mivras v'hainu chided. We're not talking about over there where he hit him the poker like using it as a baseball bat, but he used it like a saber or a foil by fencing. He was hitting him with the tip. He was poking him with the tip of the sharp end of the poker. That's why it's called a poker. He poked him. And that is coming from sharpness, and that's the reason why we say that the impact comes first and then the burning afterwards. Different topic. Still on the topic of a socket, of a knife, but not talking now about whether the impact or the heat comes first. It's mutter to use a socket that was used for avodah zara, for avodas kechavim. It was used for avodah zara, so it was used for non-kosher animals. It's not. I'm sorry, not necessarily for non-kosher animals, but it was used for avodah zara, and therefore becomes aser. It's aser b'hana. Anything that was used for avodah zara is aser dahana. So it's mutter to shecht with it and aser to lach the chabab. But you can't use it after you shechted an animal to butcher the meat. The Gemara explains, mutter lishchet ba makalkalu. It's mutter to shecht with it, because when you shecht an animal, you're causing destruction of the animal. Before, let's see Rashi. Rashi explains what it means, why it's makalkalu. It's 4 lines from the bottom. Makalku. An animal is worth more before you shech. From after shchita. While it's alive, you have 3 options. Legadol, vladus, you could use it to breed. Lecharisha, you could use it for work. Lechilo, or you always have the option to shecht it. Once you shecht it, its value goes down because now it can only be eaten. The Gemara does not seem to take into account that there's a cost of actually getting shchita. It assumes that if someone has an animal, he's probably proficient in shchita. All he has to do is take out his trusty knife and shecht it. It's just there's no real cost involved in it. So therefore, the value didn't go up after you shechted it. It just went down. Before you had more options. Options are always worth money. You lost all your options. But then, but once you have the shechted animal, butchering it is a big avodah. You take a whole cow to cut it up. It takes some time, and you got to, especially before they had those circular saws to cut the animals. It was a good physical labor to cut up an animal. So that was a benefit, and then it's also you also have a knife that was used for avodah zarah. Amar Rava says, there's sometimes that it's asur to use a knife to shecht the mesukenes. If the animal is about to die, then you're certainly having hana from shechting it. Because if you were to wait another minute and the animal died, it would become a nevela and you could never eat from it. But I guess the mesukenes It's not mama's going to die in a minute because then it would be a treifa, but it's a elderly animal and it's eventually going to die. So if you shecht it, you save the animal that it doesn't become unavailable. Mutter, and there are times that cutting it up, butchering the animal into pieces, is going to be mutter with a knife that was used for avodah zarah. That's asabana. Ba'atmi the kaimel korban. That if you have like a cowboy steak that if you could sell it for $36 a pound in pomegranate, but then if you cut it into stew meat, now it's only $9 a pound. So you're very disturbed by the by the sacrilege of doing such a thing, right? But if you butcher a nice piece of rib steak into stew meat, you're making it worth less, so you're not being nene from the cutting. Fact Gemara. Okay, this is all the discussion where you took this knife, you shechted it for avodah zarah, and was saying that the knife becomes asur b'hana. But obviously, what must bother any good Jew is once a knife was used for avodah zarah, it's being used for non. They're not shechting it, with ou hashgacha. They're using it. They're going to use it for all kinds of non-kosher animals. They'll use it for pigs and for whatever avodah zarah uses. So why aren't we worried about forgetting about the fact that the knife became asur b'hana because it was used by avodah zarah? Whatever you're going to use it on, it's going to become non-kosher because of the fat that attaches to the knife and then transfers to to what you're using to cut with. Why are we worried about the fat of Isser that got onto the knife? We're talking about a new knife that they hadn't yet used for avodah zarah. They just said this is going to be our avodah zarah knife. So once they dedicate it as the avodah zarah knife, the Gemara is saying it becomes asur b'hana. Fact Chadasha, bein l'Rav Yishmael, bein l'Rav Akiva, misham she'avodas kechavim. The knife is not actual avodah zarah. It's something that's used as a hechsher, as a preliminary for avodah zarah. It's used to serve avodah zarah, but it's not itself avodah zarah. Misham she'avodas kechavim ein asur ad she'yavdu. It wouldn't become asur b'hana prior to being used? Just because you dedicated it doesn't make it asur b'hana. So Gemara Iba is saying the pasuk bei gavza la'avodas kechavim. So one possibility is, okay, he didn't use it to shecht with, but he actually used it for avodah zarah. He used it to cut wood. Cutting wood doesn't cause any isser to get on the knife, but it becomes asur b'hana. You say maybe yeshena. We're talking about a knife that was used many times for avodah zarah. Shalivna ba'ar, but you burnt it out in the fire, so you got rid of whatever isser is on the knife. But now it still remains, even though you burnt away the isser, it still is asur b'hana because it was used for avodah zarah, and that's the discussion that we're having. That's what we're saying, that you could use it to shecht an animal because it's a kilkul, but you can't use it to butcher the meat. Okay. Itmar. So now we're getting into the real meat of the Indian, if I can make the pun. We're talking about, first we talked about shchita of a kosher animal with a heated knife. Then we talked about shechting with a knife, shechting or cutting up meat from a knife that had been used for avodah zarah, but it didn't have anything asur on it. Now we're talking about hasher v'saken shel oivdei kechavim, not avodas kechavim, not used for idol worship, but by idol worshippers. Meaning, not that they used it for the avodah zarah, but they used it for their non-kosher meat. So someone who shechted with a knife that had been previously used by goyim for non-kosher meat. Rav Amar Koilef, Rav says the meat, the non-kosher meat that got onto your animal by shechting with it, that you have to you have to peel away the outer layer wherever the knife touched. You have to dispose of the outer layer. Rabbi Bachana Amar Mediach. He says, no, all you have to do is rinse it off with cold water to get rid of whatever non-kosher is on the surface of the meat, but you don't have to peel away a layer. So let's say the machlekes is like this. We're going to give three different explanations of what the machlekes is. The Marsav Beis Hashchita Tzainin. The Manda Amar who says that you just have to rinse it off. He says the place where you shecht, when you do a shchita, it remains cold. Let me see the Bach. The Marsav Beis Hashchita Roiseach. He switches it around because really the first Manda Amar, the one who says that you have to be kailuf, is the one who says it's hot. But in either case, the one who says it's sign and that it's cold, he'll hold that you just rinse it off because the non-kosher meat did not get absorbed through the heat into the makam hashchita. The other mandama says it gets hot and therefore it absorbs some of the non-kosher fat from the knife that was still on the knife, and therefore you have to peel off the layer that absorbed a little bit of that non-kosher fat. So no, it could be that even the mandama who says you just rinse it off says the basic shchita does get warm. Mandama koilef shap. So now we understand why you have to peel off because it absorbed. Mandama madiach. Aidi the tridi simonim lafukidam loy bali. The other mandama says even though it gets warm, so normally when something is warm it absorbs, but since at the same time that it's getting warm, it also the person is doing the shchita, and the shchita is he's cutting the simonim, which are the two tubes, the food tube and the breathing tube of the animal. That causes it to expel blood. So while it's expelling blood, it's not able to absorb. That retards the normal absorption function because it's expelling blood. It's not able to absorb, even though warm basar usually absorbs. That's the second shot. And then you have the other mandam, the third shot. It's the other way around. Everyone agrees that the base of shchita is cold. So mandam mediach shabbos. So we can understand why you could just rinse it off because it doesn't absorb if it's not warm. Mandam kailaf, and the mandam who says that you have to peel off the outer layer. Agav duchka desakina bala sakin. Because of the force of the knife, the sharpness of the knife, even though normally something that's cold does not absorb, but when you cut it with a sharp knife, that forces the non-kosher remnants of shemen, of fat or chalev that's on the knife to be to be somewhat absorbed, and therefore you need a klifa. You have to take away an outer layer. It's not enough just to rinse it off.
Yo, what am I missing? So there was there was
This
there
knife
was
was used by Agus Kechavim on his animals, and it has on the surface of it, it has some
Chullin?
shemen. Now you could burn it out. Maybe that's what you're thinking.
Right, I'm saying there was
Yeah,
an
you didn't
actual
burn
piece
it
of
out. It's still
was an
on the
actual piece
knife.
was an actual piece of shemen, or it was a clean knife. It just
No, so I think there are ways. I think we're going to see it. There are different ways to clean off the knife. He had not done it. You could stick it in the ground. You could burn it out. I think burning it out
there was
is
that no,
always successful. What?
there wasn't actual shemen on it. There was an assumption because you didn't clean it
Shem,
properly
I mean,
that there was
shem is not oil. It means the chaylev,
yeah.
the oily residue. It doesn't just come off on its own. You have to do something to take it off, and he hadn't done so. It seems right. It seems very wasteful. Why didn't he just take care of the knife? But he didn't do that. Listen, you've called up your Rav, I'm sure, once or twice that you took a knife that was used for milchus and did it for flesh. Sak and treifa. What about a knife that was used to shecht an animal that's a treifa, right? A treifa is not the same thing as a non-kosher animal. We're not talking about a pig. We're talking about a cow. And we're not talking about an avela that wasn't shechted, it was shechted, but the animal was going to die, and such an animal, it's also to eat it. So again, the knife gets the shemen from the animal that's usher, and therefore you have to clean it. Zak the Gemara. So I lost the place. Um, tre- Second trefa, pligi ba Rav Acha Ravin. Did I skip? Yeah. Pligi ba Rav Acha Ravin. Chad Amar b'chan. B'chad Amar b'tzoynim. One said that if you have this knife that has, this is going back to what you had said, the knife had gotten shemen on top of it. One says you have to boil it in hot water in order to get rid of the question is how much iser got into this knife. Do we say there's just shemen on the surface of the knife? Or do we say, just like you were saying, that there's heat that comes when you shecht an animal, and therefore it absorbs into the animal some of the aser shemen? Do we say it goes the other way around, that the heat from the cutting also causes the knife to get heated up, and therefore it absorbs just a little bit of the treif, of the shemen of the treif into the knife, and therefore it's going to be awesome to use to shecht with. So the Manda Amar who says that you need hot water to get rid of the shemen of the treifa in the knife, he says that it absorbs from the heat of the animal. And the one who says B'tzainin says no, that the knife does not get heated up by the heat of the animal, and therefore doesn't absorb, it just has on the surface, so you just have to wash it off. Zaktamar vehelchasa afilu b'tzayin. And the halacha is that all you need is cold water. We don't say that the heat of the cutting causes it to absorb shemen. So you just rinse it off. V'yika blisa the parsa lemichbarei. And if you have a piece of shmata, of a strong shmata, not something too weak that it's not going to be effective, loy tzarech, you don't even have to wash it. You can just wipe it off with this with this hard clue. Why, according to the Mandam who says that you have to use hot water to get rid of the shemen on the knife that was used for treifa? What's the reason? Mishum kabbalah yisura the teiranami balev minachai. What we're worried that it absorbs because of the heat, a little bit of the shemen of the treifa. So you should have a second problem. Even when you shecht a kosher animal with a regular knife, without any issur on it, it should always aser that knife, because before you cut the second siman, the animal is still alive. So it's Ever Minachai. So why don't we say what comes from onto the knife is Ever Minachai? It's part of a Ever Minachai doesn't have to be a limb. It could just be any part of an animal that's alive. So he's saying it's getting some shemen on the knife from a live animal. Until you get through the second siman, at that point it becomes a dead animal. But up until before that point, it got a little Ever Minachai on the knife. So you should have to clean every knife after a shchita to get rid of the Ever Achai on the knife. Zaktumar, no, that's not a problem. It only starts to take the shemen when the makam of the shchita gets hot. But it doesn't, as soon as he starts cutting, it doesn't get hot enough to cause the absorption into the knife. That only happens when he finishes the two simonim. And at that point, it's already no longer Ever Minachai, so we're not concerned with the shemen that gets on it. Okay, I'm sorry I went a little long today. I told you I was a little fascinated by today's Gemara. We'll have to make it up tomorrow night.